Peace, family. Peace, 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 peace. We are back. We are back. We are back. Peace and black power to all the family. Peace and black power to all the family. Let me let the people come in here real quick. We're going to have a powerful discussion today with the family. So let me let the people come on in here real quick. Rome, peace, God, peace. Peace and black power to all the family coming in. Peace and black power. Yeah, you know, we have to switch it up a little bit. We have to switch it up a little bit. You know, we can't go live on the Voice of the Ancestors page no more, so I'm going to let the people come in on this page. You did, because you know they shadow ban. Any brother speaking truth to power, you know they're going to shadow ban you, so you know that's to be expected. So, you know, they still haven't cleared me off that shadow ban list. I don't know. Last time it was a week, but this time looks like they're going to put me on a month. So, you know how it is. Peace to the God, Evan Span, Chris F. Yeah, peace to all the family. Shout out to my brother Franza. Okay. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, the volume should be working fine. The volume should be working fine, family. But, you know, we got a powerful guest today, Brother Jabari. You know, somebody who's a scholar, an author, a primitive scholar in our community, a brother who's been back and forth to Africa and all over the world, really, you know, dropping a lot of knowledge, wisdom, and information. You know, so we're going to get him in. I'm going to give a couple more minutes for the family to come in from the other page. But other than that, you know, we're going to go ahead and move forward. And in case you don't know, this conversation will be up on my YouTube page after Voice of the Ancestors Chase, so make sure you go check that out. Make sure you go check that out. Where's the family listening from today? Where's the family listening from? Talk to me, family. Right. You said the audio is good. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the audio is good. Pretty sure the audio is good. You know, we're going to, like I say, have a powerful discussion. I'm pretty sure the audio is good. Hold on. Let me, 1 second, family. Let me manually send out the alert, because some people saying they didn't get the alert. Hold on 1 second, family. 1 second. Shout out to Houston, Texas. Okay, we got a couple people from Texas. Shout out to Vegas. Shout out to Detroit. Shout out to DC. Okay. Right. So we got a good, especially on that East Coast. Shout out to Milwaukee. Shout out to all the family coming into the building. Shout out to all the family coming into the building. Give me 2 minutes, family. Shout out to Canada. Shout out to the brothers and sisters in Canada. I get a lot of love up there. Shout out to Miss Ashley. Shout out to all the family coming into the building. Give me 1 second. I'm about to send out the alert on my other page. One second. Okay, 1 second. Yes, indeed. Peace from Harlem. Shout out to the beautiful Miss Felicia. Shout out to all the family. Hold on. Let me go ahead and post it. Here we go. And we about to get this thing started. You know, this is going to be a powerful discussion tonight. Alrighty then, family. We about to bring in Brother Jabari. Let me bring in my brother. And we're going to get this thing popping, family. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Bring in Brother Jabari. Peace, brother.
Peace.
How are you doing today?
Again.
Say again?
I said it's good to see you again.
Oh, hold on 1 second, family. Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Yes, I can hear you now.
Good.
Good.
It's good to see you again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you remember when we talked at the Foundational Black
course.
American Conference? Absolutely.
Of course, of course.
Oh, hey, it's right there. You know, we I got yours right here.
Look at
So,
this! Look at this! Look at this!
so come on now.
Y'all need to take a screenshot of this one, right? You
Hey,
need to take a screenshot of this one.
absolutely, absolutely. You know, so man, I mean, it's an honor to have you in here. You know, you one of the people that I used to watch in college. You know, I just graduated college probably about 2 years ago.
Wonderful.
But, you know,
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. I used to watch you in college, and you know, I was always taken back by not only the knowledge and the information that you would present, but the way you would present it. You know, I always say that kind of, you know, when we get into the knowledge, it's almost a sense of gang banging for us. It's just, you know, it gets personal. People get heated, but you're a brother. I've never seen you take personal attacks. You just deal with the information. Right. You just deal with the information. So, you know, you're one of the people I look up to, especially when it comes to the scholarship.
I appreciate that. I really do. You know, I think sometimes, you know, I recognize that our family is really becoming accustomed and comfortable to the information about our ancestors, right? And they may have come from lots of other places. They have, many of our people, Brother Tace, have not had the opportunity like you and I to actually do study at the college level. But that does not mean that those people who have not done study at the college level cannot be masters of the history of African people. Right. So, but sometimes when you have folks that don't necessarily interact on that level, they approach it from wherever they are. Right. You've been in the streets, you bring it from the streets. If you've been someplace else, you come in from there. It's just important for us, though, as scholars, to make sure that people are really focused on what's important. And I think that that's what I try to do, so that we're able to understand what it is to be an African. That's really what we need to do. Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit, starting off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? We know you're an author, a scholar, historian, a Kemetic priest. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your background?
Sure. I have been on a journey. It has been an exciting journey. If you told me as a young student at Cornell University in 1990 that this would be the journey I had been on for the last 31 years, I probably would have thought you were lying. And it's been an amazing journey. I have been studying the history of African people now for over 30 years. That feels like a really long time now. Even though, you know, it's amazing. It's been that long. I'm from New York City. I attended Cornell University and got a degree in Africana Studies. The Africana Studies and Research Center at Cornell is amazing, run by, you know, really scholars of African and African-American history, African diasporan history, that are world-class scholars. It was there that I got a chance to study with folks like Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen and people like Dr. John Henry Clark. And of course, there are some folks in the audience may be a little bit less familiar with. I always must speak the name of Dr. James Turner, who more than anyone else really helped Jabari El-Saze become Jabari El-Saze. He's probably the elder who most whittled me into shape. An amazing scholar and theoretician. And so it was at that institution that I really became the person that I was supposed to be. At least it set me on the trajectory of where I was supposed to be. It was there that I began to study the really in-depth, the study of ancient Africa, ancient African history, and the study of African history throughout the diaspora, focusing also on African-American history. After leaving there, during the time I was there and after leaving there, I really began also to practice ancient Kemetic or ancient Egyptian spirituality. That's another major portion of what Jabari El-Saze is made of. And so around that time, I started studying at what's called the Osoroset Society. After studying there for a few years, I was introduced and initiated into the Shrine of Ptah. And there I met another elder, Baba Heru Ankh Ra Samad Se Ptah. Most people just call him Baba Heru. He's the one that makes these amazing pieces. The person that more than anyone else has brought the tradition of ancient Kemet to the West. And so that's another major aspect of who I am. From there, I actually have been absolutely blessed to work with individuals, to be able to take thousands of our people to Africa to really get a sense of what it is to be an African.
Right.
There's so many people that say, well, you know, they may say they don't think of themselves as African. They may say, well, I'm an African American. They may even say I'm Black, right? And there's nothing wrong with those phrases. But I truly believe that if we really had a real firm grasp on what it is to be an African, what it has meant to be an African, literally for the last, easily the last 50,000 years, if not even the last million years, I think that they would be much more comfortable recognizing that it is people like you and me, Brother Chase, who not only created humanity out of our DNA, out of our lineage, but also gave civilization to the world. So it's not just that we gave the DNA to the rest of the world that then became the Asian, that then became the European.
Right.
But we also gave all of those most important aspects of culture, of scholarship, the tangible things that make up what it is to be a human being today.
Right.
We gave those things to the world. And so it has been absolutely an incredible journey I've been on to be able to not just study, but to also really work closely with people of African descent of all ages.
Right.
You know, in my first journeys to Africa, and I continued to work with a group called the African Genesis Institute, which was founded in Philadelphia. And it's been amazing that with the African Genesis Institute, I have taken over 3,000 people to the continent. We've gone to Kemetic, that land that's now misnomered Egypt. We've done a lot in Ghana. And this year, I am honored enough to be able to continue traveling and lecturing and featuring trips with the African Genesis Institute. We're going to be doing what we call the Majesty of the Moors tour. So that tour is going to be Senegal, Morocco, and Spain in one trip. And then we come back for a few weeks, my wife and I, and then we take our own trip to Kemetic, where we're taking people to Kemetic.
Right. I'm going to have to catch that.
Kemetic is. And then we go to Ghana. So what kind of year this has been?
Right,
Brother Chase, you need to go.
Absolutely.
You need to go.
Absolutely. I was talking to Miss Felicia about that earlier.
Yeah. Especially as an incredible young scholar as yourself. You know, when I look at you and I look at your work, I see myself, right?
That's a blessing.
And so I know that folks like me who are a little bit older need to give all of the resources and all of the energy to you, because when I finally close my eyes, you're going to be one of those people that is going to be continuing the narrative for our people. So folks that are a little bit older have to make sure that, and some of you on this channel know what I'm talking about. We need to give Brother Chase lots of love, lots of energy and resources so that he can become the person that the ancestors have deemed him to be. The trajectory he's on.
Oh, man.
Come on. So
I'm just playing my part. You know, I always tell people I'm just a student of the game. I'm just carrying that baton. You know, it's my leg in the race, and it's time for me to run as fast as I can with the baton and, you know, eventually pass it on to the next generation. So, you know, that's what I'm trying to do now, you know. But, you know, absolutely. But, you know, moving forward, you know, one of the things I find interesting about your story is that I believe you said you grew up in the Christian faith or the Catholic faith, but now you're a Kemetic priest. And we know anybody who studies history knows the similarities, or we know where they got that story from.
That's right.
So how did you make that transition? Because it's very hard to take somebody who is young and grows up in a certain faith and try to tell them something that's going against that, or a story that predated that, you know, or where they got that story from. Because what I notice is it's almost like, even though you're saying what you're saying is truth, it's almost like, well, grandma told me this, and that would make grandma a liar, or that would make my mother a liar. So how did you make that transition? Because that's very rare. A lot of people don't even want to hear it. Even if it's true, they don't even want to hear it. So can you speak on that, please?
Sure. Brother Chase, I'm going to say to you that people who are familiar with Jabari Osaze now, they hear me regularly say that Christianity is an echo of African traditions, particularly those traditions that come out of Kemet. That Christianity is a copy, not even a really good copy, Brother James, of those traditions, right? And when they hear me say this, they see a brother who is very secure in that truth, who can actually give them the data, the background, the research on that truth. But you have to know, when I came to that knowledge, it was painful. It was painful. I was raised Roman Catholic. My parents were my mother is still with us. They're still very involved in the church that I was raised in. My family is Roman Catholic. And so I was very comfortable there. In that church, there were many people who loved me dearly, who still love me, who care about me, who wanted only to see the best for me. But those individuals really fought in many ways to make sure that we would be able to get more information, get more access, to do the research that was prevented by people who sought to destroy us. Right? So that's part of the challenge. The challenge is that those same people that we love actually wanted us to get the information so we'd be able to do more. But sometimes that information they've given us has meant that we've moved outside of the traditions that they placed us in. That is hard. I remember the day in 1990 where I was reading Christianity Before Christ. And I could not put the book down. When I got to the end of the book, I absolutely recognized that I was not the same person anymore. And I was so terrified that I dropped the book where I was holding it. I was standing up in my dorm room. I dropped the book. It fell on the floor. I didn't pick up the book. I didn't get my coat. I didn't put on my boots. This must have been in around December or January. And I literally walked out of my dorm room into the snow and just walked. And my roommate came back. And so when I came in, cold and sat on my bed, he said, "You dropped your book?" I said, He knew how important my books were to me, right? So he's like, "You mean you dropped the book on the floor and just left it there?" He said, "Where were you?" I said, "Outside." He said, "You didn't take your coat?" I said,
That power.
And he just stared at me for a while like, yo, is this dude losing it, right? It was very difficult, Chase. It was very difficult. But from that day, you could draw a straight line from there to me now, because it was at that time that I began to recognize that the story that I had been told in some instances included tons of incorrect, factually incorrect embellishments. And that there was so much of the story that I hadn't told that, in fact, Africans were the ones this tradition and so that was difficult. It meant that I could no longer be Christian. That was the day that I was no longer Christian. I didn't have the words to describe what it was, Brother Chase, but I knew that I was different. I knew that when I spoke to my parents, when I went back to my home in Queens, New York, that I would not be the same. And that's scary when you think that you know who you are, you think you understand how you got to where you are, and then all of a sudden you realize that much of what you've been told, and I'm going to say this word is a bit harsh, but it's true, is a lie. Much of what you've been told, much of what you've been reared on is a lie. And when you recognize it's a lie, then you can actually see the hand of the power structure behind it that intentionally crafted that lie to keep you stuck in a particular place. And that was difficult.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can understand how difficult it is, because just even having conversations, some people just shut down when they hear it. They go into because like I say, it's more of really a family tie that goes into it. Just this is grandma told me, and I feel like if I change up, I'm actually going against my grandmother, my mother, my father, and what they believed in. I feel like, I'm walking another line. So, I was always amazed by that. I was always amazed by your story.
And my family treated me like that at some point. They treated me like I was trying to reject the things that they gave me. They gave me the best of what they had, right?
Absolutely.
They gave it to me in love, but there was some stuff that they just didn't know. And so today when I talk to them, I'm not just that young person that might be angry. I'm not just that young person who was just coming into the information. Now I can give them the information that helps support that knowledge that I had received. And so that is challenging. And Brother Chase, for anyone that has followed my journey recently, saying that Christianity has its origins on the African continent, it's still a very controversial statement, and I've been attacked. I've been attacked.
Right.
But the reality is, once I became a priest of Ma'at, a priest of the truth, a priest of divine balance, it's my charge to share the truth as I understand it. So while it has not been easy to be on that journey, to be on this trajectory, I know that it's what my ancestors expected me to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just to add to that, could you give us some examples of the ties between Kemetic spirituality and do you consider Kemetic spirituality a religion, or did our ancestors have a spirituality? I've heard spirituality been thrown around a lot. Can you separate the two? Was it a religion, or is it just a way of life, that they live by?
The difference between religion and spirit and something we call a spiritual form should be negligible. They should be really the same thing. But the reality is, the way that religion has been practiced in the modern world has really sullied the word. So now religion is sort of a dogma. It's a way you do things because that's how you do it. Not because it makes sense, not because you've done study, not because you have your own personal connection, but you do it this way because if you don't, you're going to hell. You do it this way because that's what powerful people told you to do. And to look at anything else, to try to come to an understanding of anything else, is anathema, is evil. That's sort of the difference between religion and spirituality. Spirituality, in many ways, is our ability to understand our fundamental relationship to the rest of the universe and to the divine force that created the universe. When we use the term spirituality, in many ways, we are saying that our understanding of that fundamental reality, it actually is larger than the terms we might use. So, for example, when I was raised a Christian, I was told if you don't say the name of Jesus, you're going to hell.
Scare tactics.
That is a mark of religion. Right? Especially when you go, and I've done this, I go to the pastor at the church that I was raised in and say, well, brother, there was really no J in the Hebrew language at the time. So you're telling me that the name could not have been Jesus? He said, oh, well, maybe it's Yeshua. And I said, it's so interesting that you have relinquished the name Jesus in 15 seconds with a non-believer, but you have told my mother, my family, that if they don't say the name Jesus, they're going to hell. And you just relinquished it in 15 seconds without even giving them proper context. That is the mark of religion. Spirituality says that the names are important for us to understand how to look at a tradition, but the names are not the be-all and end-all. So in the Kemetic tradition and in many other African traditions, in the Kemetic tradition, for example, let me give you a grounded example. The way that our Kemetic ancestors, those great Africans who gave the world so much of what modern civilization is, the way that they would have rendered this is they would say, at your end, your heart would be weighed. And in your weighing, you're weighed for your deeds, your actions. You're not weighed on whether you said Heru or Asar or Ast or Heru, Osiris or Isis. You're not weighed on whether you say those names. This isn't some kind of magic trick. You are being measured on the kind of person that you have been. And so everything in the tradition is about how we should actually come to the world in divine balance. It is bigger than the terms we use. It's bigger than the cultural manifestations of that practice. It's about how you are doing the things in your community and for the people around you that are sacred, that are holy. That is what you're being weighed on. And that's the reason why people say that the Kemetic tradition is more spirituality than religion. That's the reason why it occurred. But in actuality, Brother Chase, if people had not done such dastardly, such evil things with religion, the term religion itself simply means to tie back. That's where it comes from. It comes from the term religare in Latin, I believe. And so the problem is more what people have done to it. And so that's what I would say. I know that was a long answer to a short
Oh,
question.
that was good, because
right?
it's a lot of confusion. It's a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people who I notice they might throw away the Jesus figure, but they'll replace him with a black Jesus figure, and they'll wait on him. So they just replace one thing with another that makes them feel more comfortable, but they still not getting the principles or the concepts of it. So like I say, that breakdown was needed.
And in some ways, Brother Chase, I get that we all have our journey, right? That there's steps along the way.
That is true.
I had my journey, right? I mean, I if you had looked at me on that cold day in December or January of 1990, I would not be who I am today. I certainly know much more and have done much more and have done things in my community that I think will help weigh my heart favorably in the end.
Right.
So if you had spoken to me then, I might have said something that didn't exactly make all the sense that it would, I think, today, right?
Right.
We have to allow people to have their transitionary stages. But on the same token, we have to be clear with people who are on their journey that they are simply at the beginning of a journey and not the end of the journey. So I clearly agree with you that many people, I have a really good friend that says you cannot wrap the Bible in kente cloth. I love that phrase.
Right.
I love that phrase. You can't just simply take what you've been given and they say, oh, they're all black. And then just do it the way they did it, but just, kind of go through the pictures you have and with a marker, color them brown or tan.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. Because as Europeans have taken this tradition out of Africa, they've done a lot to actually to shape it according to their own social mores.
Absolutely.
So now in some ways we have to undo some things that are done. So for example, a good example is this. When you read the biblical text, you are going to see great wisdom in many sections of the biblical text. Absolutely. I don't want to give anyone the impression that the Bible is a terrible book and you should throw it away. That is not what I'm saying. However, you will also see what we can only call as misogyny. Things in the Bible that are really damaging to women. Right. Really damaging to women. So we have to come to a point where we recognize that some of that stuff is not us. That when you look at ancient African societies, women were actually held in very high regard. In fact, there is no deity, there is no male deity without his female counterpart. It does not exist that way in the African tradition. Right.
Wherever there's a man, there's a woman.
Yes. So we have to now, we can't just say Christianity comes from Africa, so we're going to do it the same way, but now it's black people. We have to now take it back to the way that we would have actually practiced this. That is the important part of what we must do.
Absolutely.
And one more example. You asked me to give you an example of some of the ways that we know that Christianity comes from Kemet. We should recognize that when we look at many of the key myths of ancient Kemet, of ancient Africa, we see the initial archetypes of that which would become the Christian story. We see several deities, but particularly one deity who is murdered, and through his resurrection, he allows everyone else access to an afterlife.
Absolutely.
We see that he is a resurrected savior that is represented by a tall, pointy, I don't actually have one here with me, tall, pointy thing that in the West we call an obelisk.
Absolutely.
Asar, who the Greeks called Osiris, is connected to the obelisk. We called it the Tekken in ancient history. Well, if the early Christians didn't think that they were mirroring that story, why is it that they would take one of those obelisks, one of those Tekken from Africa, put it in the middle of Vatican City, and then their priest use that piece, which is connected to the resurrection of Asar, to tell when Easter is going to fall?
Oh, man.
If they didn't know what they were doing, you must know what they were doing.
It was just coincidence. That's what they tell me. It was just coincidence.
Right?
Right.
And by the way, there's sections of the Bible that come directly from African text. One of the best examples is when you look at a text from ancient Kemet called the Instructions of Amenemop. You look at the Instructions of Amenemop, and you see that verbatim sections of it have been placed into the book of Proverbs. Verbatim, so clearly verbatim, brothers, that the scholars who recognize that the Instructions of Amenemop was an original source were able to correct an error that was commonly being reprinted in the book of Proverbs.
By looking at Kemetic.
That is how, yes.
Wow.
So that if following ancient African traditions is evil, and if the word of God is the Bible, then what we have to understand that there's a great contradiction here. Because if the word of God is the Bible and the word that comes from Kemet is in the Bible, but ancient African traditions following them as evil, there's a great contradiction that we have to now come to rectify.
Absolutely. That was well said. This is why we saving the live. This is why we're going to put the live on YouTube, because it makes you think, and, I was talking to Dr. Kaba the other week, and he was saying, Brother Chase, I just want you to go research. Make you go research and do the research for yourself. So that's terrific. Just changing gears a little bit. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is me being a member of the younger generation. I'm 26 right now. A lot of my friends and peers are in the same age group. I noticed a, pushback with the political system as far as voting goes. I myself, I'm not afraid to say I did not vote this election. I didn't believe either candidate was in the best interest of Black people. But I noticed that a lot of elders, even when I was talking to a lot of elders, they were saying, no, you need to vote, and it's always this butting of the head. I feel like the younger generation, we're more rebellious, and we like, listen, we're not going to do the same thing. It's the butting of the heads, and I understand that. And the only reason I'm bringing this up because I've heard you talk about it on other platforms. You did vote, so what would be your opinion on that? Because as a younger generation, I feel like, listen, I'm not waiting for either political party no more, especially when both of them have a history of harming my people. And I'm not going to just be patient. I'm not going to take it one step at a time. I'm going to try to kick the door down if I can, So what is your opinion on that as far as voting goes? And really, to me, it's the whole idea that, okay, in order, if you want real change, you have to be on the inside. Whether some of the younger generation said, no, we're just going to build our own system, forget all the other nonsense. So could you speak on that for me, please, Brother Jabari?
Can I first start by saying that those feelings that the younger generation have about not being willing to wait for change, about the importance of just simply destroying systems and creating systems that are more equitable for us, for people of African descent. We have to recognize that energy that youth brings has led to many, many, many powerful movements in this country and around the world.
Right.
So for elders or who are a bit older, like myself, to say, that the youth are incorrect about that, we would absolutely have forgotten our own positions just 20 or 30 years earlier. Because 20 or 30 years earlier, Brother Chase, I probably would have said the same thing that you just did. I would agree. Right. So I get why you feel the way you do. I do believe that voting is an important tool. I believe that it is only one tool. And that if we look at voting as a panacea, as a remedy for everything that that ails Black people, then we've gotten it. We don't understand what voting is. And if we don't understand what voting is, then maybe we shouldn't do it. Because if you think that just pulling a lever in a booth is going to solve the problems that Black people have, particularly when you are absolutely correct, both parties have a history of rampant, violent racism. That's absolutely, that is irrefutable. You don't even have to do much research as scholars. You don't have to do a lot of research to find that, right? That's easy research. It is absolutely true that they both have really, really disturbing histories, right? I believe, however, that we should be doing more than one thing at the same time. We should be building institutions that are better for Black people. We should be actually deciding that things that don't work for Black people, things that have been put in place to keep people of African descent in a subordinate position must be destroyed. We should all agree with all of those things. But I think we should also vote. And the reason why I think we should also vote, here's some really quick reasons. First of all, you should know that if you're paying taxes, the people who decide how your money is going to be spent are those people who are elected. And I don't think that anyone should take my money and not have my voice be heard with regard to how it should be spent.
I respect
That's
that.
a very basic thing. That's on the local level, on the state level, and on the federal level. Right? So if you think that our schools, as challenging as it is, as public schools are in our neighborhoods, if you think they need less funding, then don't vote. That's just the reality, because the folks who actually want you not to vote in our current period, those are people that tend to be in the Republican Party. And they are completely comfortable, completely eviscerating those systems, completely comfortable to making sure that the public infrastructure of the United States doesn't exist for people who are poorer, people who are the black and brown people of societies. They're completely comfortable with that. Now, that doesn't mean that Democrats are saviors. They are not. Right? They are still going to make many of the same bargains that do not help black people. But what we have to do is we have to be strategic in our vote, both locally and federally, and then hold them to the fire. Keep in mind that, for example, so many of our people have been held captive by the criminal justice system.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I say to people here in Harlem and in New York City, Brother Chase, do you know that judges are elected?
Right.
When you went before the judge and they treated you like you were an animal, people elected that person to do that. So if you don't vote, then you're going to get what you get. Right.
I understand that.
So all of those things that happen, all of the things that make starting businesses easier for us actually can happen through the legal system of the United States. All of that mean that our children will get more of the resources they need. If you look at how many black and brown children, how many people of African descent are struggling with the very basic reality of hunger during this very challenging time that we're in. I mean, I think that black people, we should feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, house ourselves, but we are not prepared to do that yet. What systems are there to support them as they are in those difficult situations? Those are systems that are there that are part of the structure of the United States. Now, I am one that believes most of the structure of the United States needs to be torn down and rebuilt.
Right.
But how do we get from here to there? The only way we're going to get from here to there is by working both in and outside the system. By both working on those things that don't work well and destroying them later. Because you can't tell me that the folks that I see at the food pantry down the block, it was a line. Brother Chase, you would have thought that there's some new Air Jordans that were on 50% discount. You should have seen the line.
Absolutely.
You would have thought that Beyonce and Jay-Z were on the corner. You should have seen the line. Those people were there for food.
Right.
So what do we do now?
Right.
Because we know that the social infrastructure of the United States is weaker than it used to be. Those people still need the assistance of the state. Many of those people, when we look at people in my neighborhood who have Section 8 and all those other housing vouchers that help them live in places, that's part of the system that we're in. One party is going to destroy it and the other one is not.
Absolutely. I hear you.
So we have to now make a strategic decision. To be strategic in the localities that we're in, and also a decision that will affect the federal government. And in addition to that, Brother Chase, we have to also have elected officials that look like us, think like us, because they are from us. But if we don't vote for them, they won't be elected either.
Right.
So there's a lot that has to be done. I agree with you that voting is not going to save black people. I agree with you. But I think that there are the problem that we are having is much more complex than taking one action. voting is one action that is going to be critically important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if I could just let you in on a lot of the mindset, like I said, I'm always around younger people.
Right.
Do you feel like, because I've felt like this before, I feel like not voting is, though, a form of political strategy. The sense that what we're telling is both parties, neither one of you are good enough. We're not going to settle for the lesser of two evils. You know, I'm not going to allow you to say that, well, you'll still be on the plantation, but I'll take you from the field to the house. Because to me, a lot of the Democratic Party, if we're going to speak frankly, that's what they do. They keep you on the plantation, but you're not going to be in the field no more. You're going to be in the house. And we'll put people who look like you, because we understand black people in some form are in love with symbolism. We're in love with symbols of freedom and not true freedom in itself. You know, so we'll get the black politicians, we'll get the black representatives to represent you, but they're never going to really do anything for you. And that's something, you know, studying the history. And of course, I know you studied it as well and probably have studied more than me. That's something that I'm seeing. So in my opinion, I'm looking at the Democrats like, listen, if black people don't vote for you, you crash and burn. You crash and burn. Forget the lesser of two evils, but that party's going to crash and burn if we don't vote, because we are their voter base. So if you're not meeting demands that we see fit, not that you see fit, not I'm going to throw you crumbs in here and there, then you crash and burn at the end of the day. How do you feel about just the form of not voting being a form of political strategy? And a lot of black people are saying that, hey, well, if we don't, what's the worst that can happen? We've been through everything. They've gone everything at black people. You know, what's the worst that can happen? So what is your opinion on that? And I'm not trying to, you know, argue with you. I'm just literally trying to have a bill because I know you're an elder. Right, right, right.
It's a good conversation.
Absolutely.
Let me say it this way. I do believe that if black people do not vote, the Democratic Party is the party that will most suffer.
Right, right.
But the way that our system works, if that party most suffers, then another party will be in control. It's just that simple. It's not like if we don't vote, then something else happens. And for people who are not voting, what's the platform that you are advancing towards any politician? If you're going to say, if you want my vote, you have to do A, B, and C, many people say, I'm not going to vote. But they haven't actually said what would make them vote.
Right.
So if you are going to decide not to vote, you need to be very strategic about what you need to get in order to vote.
Right.
Because just not voting just means that another party is going to be in power. That's a strategic decision. That's not a powerful strategic, that's not a strategy that will work. I am all for creating platforms. I've been part of creating some platforms and saying our politicians need to do these things. You need to do these things in order to get our support. That's what we should do. I've been parts of groups that have done that since I was a college student.
Absolutely.
I was a member of NCOBRA, the national committee that was established for reparations. I was actually part of that organization in the 1990s.
Right,
in the 90s.
Right.
Some people think this movement towards reparations is new. It is not.
Right,
absolutely. You could take it all the way back to right after the Civil War with an incredible activist named Callie House. Most people who are arguing for reparations right now never heard the name Callie House. That was a sister that was fighting for reparations after the Civil War, before 1900. There's a book on her life that most people do not have. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is this. The way that our system works, it is about, because we have a two-party system, there are winners and there are losers. Right? If you decide that you're not going to vote, the other team whose positions are even more dangerous to you, will win.
If I could, Brother Jabari, do you feel? Sure. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, sir.
No. Please go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you, do you feel, because a lot of people have asked me that question, do you feel? I feel as if other groups, whether it be the Asian community, the Jewish community, voting is not, they don't come out in record numbers and vote like we do, but they more so control political parties through PAC money. And I think that's something that black people really haven't explored yet, pooling the money together and necessarily controlling these politicians through PAC money. We see the NRA do it all the time. That's why they'll never really take away guns or anything of that nature, because the NRA puts billions and billions of dollars into these politicians. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like we could use economic power. That's something that I always push, because I do believe that we should be political. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be political at all.
Right.
But my thing is, I feel like we should move our energy instead of standing in lines all day voting and complaining into PAC money where we can hit you in your pocket. You see what I'm saying? And you don't have the fundraising money to go around. We know we have a lot of spending power as Black people in America. So how do you feel about the whole PAC thing as far as PACing behind politicians?
I definitely believe that in the way that our electoral system works right now, after the court case known as Citizen United, PAC money can really change the trajectory of the folks that get selected to actually run your local and even your federal system. I think that Black people, I support PACs. I support certain PACs. I give money to certain PACs. You know, I communicate with certain, by the way, PACs are political action committees, and PACs can actually gather large sums of money and give them to candidates. And sometimes they don't even have to, they can say that they give money to candidates, but they don't have to say who gave them the money. This is what we call dark money.
Okay.
This is what we call dark money. And so it's a dirty game that needs to end. I think that PACs should end. But while they're here, we need to take advantage of them. So yes, I do believe that we should actually have more control over the system through how our dollars work. But I don't think though that that means that we should not vote, because in actuality, you're going to see that if you look nationwide, Black people have made major advances through having people on the local level who are elected that look like us.
Right.
I don't want to give the impression that because things are difficult for people of African descent, that there has been no improvement. That would, as a historian, I recognize where we come from.
Absolutely.
Right? Imagine it was illegal for you to learn how to read. And now you're a college graduate.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a political system undid that process so that you can actually go to college.
Absolutely.
Politicians undid that. Does that make sense? So that some of the things that we're able to do, I own a house in Harlem. It was illegal for me to own land at some point. The political structure, undid that. So I think what we have to do is we have to recognize that politics are not the be-all and end-all for Black people. That voting is not the be-all and end-all for Black people. It is a tool. And if you are in a battle, if you are in a war, and the other side is using landmines, grenades, chemical gas, assault rifles, airplanes, and you say, you know what? We don't like airplanes. We don't like all the other things they use. We're going to just use rifles. Then what you have done is you have actually not allowed your army to advance like the other army. We have to recognize that voting is a tool. For you because of more things.
Can you see me, brother?
If you just don't vote, you have to be able to go to the candidates that are looking for your vote and say, we're not voting because you haven't done these things. If you just don't vote, then you just don't vote. They don't even know why you didn't vote. They don't, that's not a strategy. It can be a strategy, but I don't think that many of us are using it as a strategy. And let me also say something else, Brother Chase. In many places, voting means standing on a line. In some places, the lines are ridiculously long, like in Georgia and other places. But in some places, it means standing on a line and pulling a lever. It is one of the easiest tools that we can use. And I can also say that we should actually not just see voting or the political process as starting with pulling the lever. How about, like you are advocating, Brother Pack, Brother Chase, so powerfully about PACs. The PACs will actually allow certain candidates to get to the point where they can be on the ballot. We have to get involved before we're pulling the lever. Why can't we say, you know what, Brother Chase is the person we want to represent this district? Why not? What's stopping us from doing that?
Mm-hmm.
And so I want us to recognize that there are a lot of different ways that we can actually utilize power in this system. And that is what we must do. And I have to say, because I'm here to talk about an incredible film, I just want to say really quickly that when we look at the film Happy, the documentary Happy, one of the things that you will notice is that Happy actually begins to describe what kinds of tools should we use. Are we using banks? Or should we use stocks? Should we do cryptocurrency? Should we actually look at the political system? Should we actually look to own land? As a documentary, there are very few vehicles that will actually look at all the things that Black people should do. And Happy doesn't say this is the only way to do it or this is the way to do it. Happy does an amazing thing by saying, here are some of the suggestions we need to now engage in a dialogue.
Absolutely.
That's the reason why more than a documentary, it's a movement. Because as you look at all of these, all the contours of the movement for Black liberation, the movement for African struggle in wide, looking at the mechanisms that we will use is how we will actually come into power. And that's what we're talking about now, Brother Chase. We're talking about, well, what are the tools that we should use? You know what I would say? All of them.
Okay.
But we have to know how to use each of those.
Right. Using responsibly as well.
All of them.
Absolutely.
You can't use economic power without political power. You can't use economic power without political power. Who decides what your interest rates will be? Who decides how much money you can have in the bank before you get charged? Who decides whether your bank should even be able to decide what if the bank closes and says, you know what, we're going bankrupt. We don't have to give you your money. Your money is actually backed by something called FDIC. That was legislation. That was legislation. Politicians put that in place. So we have to now recognize that economic power, political power, the power, and let's even be clear, the power of defending ourselves, the power of educating ourselves, the power of becoming involved in spiritual forms that reflect African people. All of these are tools that we must use towards the liberation of African people.
Absolutely. And that was well said. I'm going to continue to study as a student, continue to do my research and build on some of your things that I know you speak about. You said Casey House, right?
Cali House.
Cali House. Okay.
Cali
I wrote it down. I'm going to
House.
look her up as well, and that's the beautiful thing about, having these conversations, because you introduced me to somebody I never heard of before. And I like to think of my person as a historian myself. So, that's excellent.
Brother, it is not just what you think of yourself as. I got the first volume of your book.
Right.
Historian. That's
man.
Right?
I appreciate that.
But understand that just because you're a historian doesn't mean you know everything. I don't know everything. I've been studying for more than 30 years, right?
Right.
So you are a historian, and you are bringing history to our people. Folks like me and folks that are older than me can only imagine. We need you. You are one of the most important tools that Black people have today, because the reality is Jabari is approaching 50. And the people who trained me, many people who trained me are already ancestors.
Right.
Many of them are already ancestors. And they were putting energy into me so I could play my role. We have to put energy into you so you could play your role. And that is really important. And the work that you're doing at 26, I wasn't doing this at 26, Brother Chase. Your trajectory, I think you have 3 books now, don't you?
Yeah, I have 3. Volume 1, 2, and 3.
The trajectory that you're on is, I'm telling you, because I knew those amazing scholars, that the Dr. Benz, the Dr. Clarks, the Asa Hilliards, and so on and so on and so on. And those that are still with us, Dr. Turner and others who are still there. Let me say to you that those scholars are both Ancestral Realm and now are smiling on you, because you're doing the work that the younger generation must do. It can't just be all people who have gray beards. That'd be crazy. That'd be crazy. Absolutely. And we're also going to have to do like you're doing. Folks, before we went live, Brother Chase had to explain to me how we were going to do this on Instagram. And listen,
Right,
I'm a technologically savvy person, but when I was Brother Chase's age, there was no Instagram, there was no Google, there was no Facebook. For Brother Chase, this is like second nature to him. We need you to be able to do what you're doing to communicate to a broad number of our people who are coming up through the ranks just like you are.
Absolutely. And, you know, like I say, I'm just carrying that baton and taking it to the next level, you know, and I understand that I am a student.
You're running faster than most of us who ran the race before you. Let's just
right. I appreciate that. I'm honored by that. I'm honored by that. But, you know, going back, you were speaking about the economy and, you know, we were having economic discussions, Pat, whatever. Can you talk about, because you are a part of the great film Happy, great documentary. If you haven't already, family, I believe it's www.happyfilms.com.
That's right.
So make sure you go ahead and go get that. Can you talk about, though, because when we ever talk about Kemet, we always talking about the engineering, the astronomy, the schools, the mystery system, you know, all the monuments they built, but we never talk about the economy that fueled it. And you even hear people who say, and, you know, I get on brothers all the time about slaves building this stuff. Oh, they were just slaves building this stuff. But you broke that down beautifully in your book, you know, talking about that, that these were well-paid workers. And to me, you're going to have to pay somebody a lot to do what they were doing back in ancient Kemet. So this had been a flourishing economy. This couldn't have been 2 or 3 wealthy people. You know, this is a flourishing economy. So can you talk about, you know, how the economy built ancient Kemet as we know it today, and even just the expansion? Because a lot of people think of Kemet as that Egypt, the country we call Egypt today. And that's it. But, you know, when you study the scholars that came before us, the George G. M. James, they talk about the expansion all the way as far out maybe as Asia or India, that Kemetic Empire was. Can you talk about the economy that fueled this type of stuff?
Absolutely. That's an excellent question, by the way. And it's a question that is well framed by the documentary Happy. It's right. So in many ways, Happy tries to explain how Kemet happened in the first place. Right? How did it happen? And I think that we have to recognize that as I am living in the middle of the most urban environment in the United States, I'm in Harlem, right? Living in the middle of Harlem. I don't live in the desert near a river, right? So that sometimes when we study the history, we don't always recognize that some of the situations that those historical people were in are radically different than the ones that we're in today. What we have to do is now look at how they did what they did and why they did what we did, so we can take away the principles, the practices, and use them in the way that they occur in our environment and our time today. Right. So that's one of the things that we should do. So as we think about how ancient Kemet exists, we should recognize, and I know that almost everyone that is hearing my voice, everyone that's hearing my voice, has heard of the Nile River. Well, know that the Nile River, that was not the name of that river. That river was known as Hapi.
Absolutely.
And the documentary takes the name of the river because the river was the tool that created this amazing economic juggernaut. This amazing civilization that was able to actually produce more than any other civilization around it. And because it was able to produce more, then it could take people out of the field. If you're able to effectively grow grain and grow fruits and vegetables and engage in animal husbandry, then what you're doing, Brother Chase, is now you're doing it so effectively that not everybody has to actually be on the farm. That means that some people can be scholars. They're not actually in the field all day growing food because you figured out how to do it so effectively that one person could grow more than most. That's kind of what happened. And when you think about what the land we're talking about, the land of Kemet, and the fact that they were able to produce more to sustain a nation than anyone else, it boggles the mind. They lived in a desert. And so you could imagine this great ancient African before Kemet, Kemet ever existed, moving up along the side of that river. And for the most part, they are living in a desert, which means it is difficult for them to grow food. And then when they get to Kemet, the area that would become Kemet, maybe they said, well, you know what? A little bit of food right by the river. The rest of it is desert. We can't grow much there, but we can grow some food here. So maybe we should settle on the river. But then we know, Brother Chase, that every year something very interesting happens to that river. It swells because of the rains that come from the deeper interior of Africa. The river begins to swell, and then it overflows everything. It floods everything. And so imagine that you are a person who is living in the desert where water is a problem. It's difficult for you to have access to water. And then you find a place where you could have access to water, where you can grow food, where you can live. And then that river overflows and destroys everything. A lesser people would have said, we must be cursed.
Right.
A lesser people would have said, let's get the heck out of here, because either we're in the desert or this river overflows. We can't live here. A lesser people would have been broken by that. But instead, ancient Africans figured out how to live in harmony with their environment.
Right.
And part of what they did is they were studying the stars, and the stars helped them understand the cycles of how that environment they were living in worked. So that instead of flood as a catastrophic, destructive, maybe even a dangerous event, because you can imagine people die in floods. Just look at Katrina.
Right.
Look at Hurricane Harvey. People die in flood. Instead of actually dying in calamity based on what happens with that river, they learned how to work in tune with the river so that they would allow, the flooding was a good thing now, because the flooding brings lots of fertile soil. So now if we work in tune with the river, we're going to let the soil come in, we're going to let it be irrigated, and now we're going to be able to do something else during the time that the river is flooded, and come back and grow our food, and then be prepared for when it floods again. That is Hopi. That's the Hopi that existed 10,000, 5,000, 3,000 years ago. And it's also the Hopi that exists in your life, Africans who are listening to my voice. You have to ask yourself, where is the Hopi in your life? Where is that thing that looks like it is destructive? That thing that looks like it is the thing that can break your back? And how can you figure out how to utilize those things that a lesser people would think are damaging to your advantage? That's what the African did. That made Kemet the most powerful, the most prolific society. Strong enough that clearly, if not everybody has to farm, then some people can be astronomers. If not everybody has to farm, then some people can actually begin to write. If not everybody has to farm, then some people will actually be able to become doctors and lawyers and architects and engineers. That is what happened in Hapi. And that's why Kemet, that land that is what today we would consider the northeast coast of Africa, was able to flourish. Kemet really in some ways is not just about that landmass as you were describing, Brother Chase, because the people of Kemet were following the river from the interior of Africa. And so it flourished on that coast. But Kemet in many ways is just on a tree that has very deep roots. And those roots led to the tree, which led to the flower. And that flower then gave reading, writing, mathematics, architecture, medicine, spirituality to the rest of the world. And that is the story of Hapi. And I've told that story in a really cursory way, but understand the documentary Hapi tells that story in the ancient way. I was saying this to Brother Taki Grant, who was the producer and the mastermind behind Hapi. I said, Brother Taki, you have the nerve, the gall to tell a powerful historical story and then not just leave it in history, then say, well, what does this history mean for what we're doing right now? There is no other documentary that does that.
Right.
There is no other documentary that does that. This is a powerful tool for African people, for Black people in 2021 and beyond. Because if we understand who we are, if we understand what we've done, if we understand what we've overcome, if we understand how we've used those things around us to our advantage, now we understand that there is nothing that we cannot surmount today. That there's nothing that truly can destroy us today. That we are the most resilient, the most centered, the most intelligent, the most heavily resourced people on the planet. But there has been a great drive to decide how we're going to use all the tools in front of us to become the people that we've always been.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like I said, that was beautifully put in. And I think almost Kemet laid out a blueprint for all civilizations to follow. You know, when you look at the importance of the river, even in the Americas, the Mississippi River was considered the version of the Nile. And you saw civilizations flourishing around that river in the Americas. So that's very important to understand. How I always want to ask you, Brother Jabari, how did the Kemites use the river as a source of payment? What was the payment like for the pyramid workers, people who built for the pyramids? How would they pay them? What would they pay them in? You know, would they pay them in food, fish, things of that nature? What was the currency back then? Because that's something I think we kind of get caught up in, the fiat currency. You know, I seen a sister the other day, congratulated her. She's starting to garden again. But like you said, we were at one with nature, and we had the basis of it down as far as farming and agriculture goes. That was the resources, as you say. That was the economy.
They're actually, this is a really good question, Brother Chase. There are, because the pyramid time existed for thousands of years, right?
Right.
There's not one currency. There were several currencies. And what we were able to do is recognize that at different times we use different things. So there were certainly times when workers would be paid in produce, paid in animals, paid in those sorts of things. And there are other times that we had something similar to what we have today, where there were literally ledgers that said, because you work, this is the amount that you can get someplace else. Maybe, and sometimes they would actually have things that would be a stand-in for currency. In early Africa, one of the stand-ins was the cowrie shell. It's one of the reasons why we use the cowrie shell so much. But at other times, they would have done trade in gold. They would have done trade in silver. They would have done trade in many other things. But I think it's fascinating that for some of the workers on the pyramids themselves, we have ledgers that say, because this person is a worker, they can get X amount of this.
So they almost had like credit, almost like a credit card.
This is exactly what we would consider credit. And let's go further, Brother Chase. More than credit, they had health plans. They had sick days. They even had what some people might call a health flex plan or a health spending plan. So in one of the times, one of the rulers who was having monuments built wasn't paying people properly. And guess what the people did? They went on a strike.
Oh, man.
And the description says that they were walking around their work site and they would not work. This is a strike. If you were transported there and you could see what was happening, you would say, wait a minute, these people are on strike. You would recognize it as a strike.
Right.
And so the ruler, recognizing he had to do something, he made an agreement with them. One of the agreements was to give them 2 more sick days. So I want us to understand that while we're talking about something that occurred thousands of years ago, these ancient African societies in some ways were as advanced or more advanced than the society we live in today.
Right.
The fact that they actually could get health care as workers, the fact that they could actually have sick days as workers, the fact that they actually had the ability to get goods based on the hours they worked, based on the kind of work they were doing. We know they were paid very well.
Absolutely.
Because we have the records of what they got paid. We have the records of where they lived. We even can do, this is going to be funny for some of y'all who listen who have never heard this before. We can even do fecal studies. What does that mean? That means that when we find ancient doo-doo, we can study the ancient doo-doo and say, what were these people eating?
Wow.
So we know
Wow.
that those workers were paid very well.
Right, right.
So this is not a situation where enslaved people built those monuments. And in actuality, what we are seeing is we are seeing a very advanced, very, very intricate, very comprehensive economic system which occurs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, remember, I told you that you couldn't work during the time, you couldn't till the fields during the time that the flood was there, right?
Right,
That was
right,
one of the prime times to work on the monuments.
right.
Well, you can't be in your field, so come work on the monument.
Absolutely.
In some ways, this is a governmental works plan.
Mm.
So, you know, you have people out of work, just like now. The unemployment rate is really high because of the pandemic and things shutting down. Well, people are saying the government should do something so that people who are really struggling can still survive.
Right.
That's exactly what the Kemetic people were doing.
Mm.
So that while the flood is there and you can't be on your field, do something else and the government will pay you.
Absolutely.
We have to recognize that those governments that existed in ancient Africa, particularly the governments of Nubia, the governments of Kemet, those governments that existed during that period of time, they became extremely advanced civilizations. And that many of the things that we enjoy today are nothing more than reflections of what our African ancestors taught the rest of the world to do. That's
Absolutely.
the story that we have to learn. And that's also the story that is told in miraculous form in different places, because Hopi will take you to different countries as you'll actually see some things in different countries, definitely in Kemet and all over the United States, from a large number of scholars, a large number of people who are experts in their field. They will tell that story of how we did what we needed to do then and how we have to do certain things to be powerful today. That is the reason why you got to go see the film. And you have to go
Absolutely.
to copyfilm.com.
Yep, we got it pinned down below. We got it pinned down
That's
below,
how you're
family.
gonna get access.
Absolutely. We got it pinned on the bottom of the screen, family. My last question, Brother Jabari, because we don't want to keep you too long. I could talk to you all day because, you know, this is very interesting stuff. And it's always good to talk to somebody who knows way more than me. You know, usually people be trying to come to me asking questions. I'm like, well, brother, this is way out of my wheelhouse. You know, so it's always good to talk to a brother like yourself. In closing, what do you think are some keys that our people can take from our ancestors in ancient Kemet and really just African people around the world who built powerful civilizations? Because I think that's the thing we're always striving to get back to. We're always striving to get back to our own nation. So what are some things we can learn from them that we can build upon? And what are also some things that we can learn that were mistakes they made and how they failed? You know, Chancellor Williams has the book, The Destruction of African Civilizations, talking about how they failed, because I think that's an important thing. How did we get in this condition where we're over here and, you know, we don't even believe, you know, we had any type of empires or things of that nature? So what are some the key things that we can learn and learn from?
Excellent question. I'm going to give you three because I could give you a bunch of them.
Right.
I don't want your audience to say, okay, how long is this brother go? He's giving me a list of 87. Let's talk about three things that you can learn from ancient history, things that are described in a documentary, by the way, that we absolutely have to be able to take away so that we can be powerful now. The first thing we have to understand is that we are our greatest resource. The relationships that we build with each other, not just in the United States, but the relations that we build with Africans worldwide, in the diaspora and on the continent, is our greatest resource. There's a reason why one of the first things that our enslavers did when we got here is removed our names, forced us not to speak our languages or to practice our ancient traditions or all of those things. Because if you disconnect people from their history and from those people who are like them, guess what you're able to do?
You're able to turn them into whoever you want to be.
That's right.
Right.
And then the other thing you can do, Africa is the most well-resourced landmass on the planet. Africa is the place where all of the resources that are needed to run a modern society are. So as long as Africans in the diaspora are disconnected from the continent, it's easier for other people to go in and be in control. As long as people on the continent are in turmoil, it's easier for other people to go into the continent and to be in control. So we have to understand that our social relationships are our greatest resource. That's the first thing. In fact, our enslavement, you could say that one of the reasons why we became enslaved is because of the difficulties and the bickering between African peoples.
Right.
So
Right.
if I'm at war with people, and now there's this other group that either is going to pay me, empower me, or they're fighting with me with advanced military weapons, the one thing that I could possibly do is say, well, you know what? I'm going to take the people who I'm fighting with and give them to them.
Right.
So
right. Prisoners of war.
These European societies were able to exploit the difficulties amongst each other. It's the same thing we see in Kemet. We see that ancient Kemet falls apart and foreign people come in. Let's just even talk about the period where a group of people called the Hyksos come in. Family, if you don't know the Hyksos, you need to study on that. The Hyksos come in. They're welcomed in. They have a famine where they are. They're welcomed in. And then in a few short generations, they're in control and running things and brutal. And brutal. We have to recognize that we are our greatest resource. And as long as we are bickering amongst each other, other people want those disagreements to occur so they can continue to pilfer, steal, and exploit. That's the first thing. The second thing we have to recognize is that the African views gender relationships as a very important aspect of our societies, that women are not beneath men. That's something that later people, that the youngest people on the planet brought in. That's their stuff. And some of us have utilized it. When we look at ancient Africa, we see powerful women. We see female deities. We see that sometimes, in some instances, you could argue that women are more powerful than men.
Right.
How many of us are familiar with the story of the Candaces or the Kandakes in Nubia? A line of at least 13 of them, where the queens were the powerful head and the king was secondary. How many of us are familiar with that story? The idea that women are not our equals is something that Europeans gave us, and we ought to dispense with it. We ought to dispense with it. That's the second thing that we should take away from our history. The third thing that we have to take away, as we study our history, we have to understand that it is actually the African that created all the things around us. And if we were the ones that put forward this society, if we were the ones that created those things that created society, quick example, Africans had the most advanced healthcare systems, the most advanced doctors. Africa in its earliest stages had doctors and specialties before other places had doctors.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You look at the world's first dentist, you're going to see a guy named Hesse Ra. Hesse Ra had an afro like my father in the 70s.
All right.
It is irrefutable who he is and what ethnicity he is. The world's first doctor. We see Imhotep, who was a contemporary who was one of the early doctors in the same period. We see women who are doctors. That's in the ancient world.
Right.
Now let's fast forward for a second and come into our period today, where we actually see that the entire world is beset by a health crisis, a pandemic. And many people say that a vaccine must be the thing that will get us out of this pandemic. Now, listen, African, I understand why you are hesitant. Because
I was about to say
that. Their medicine has done a lot of negative things to Black people. We could spend 5 years telling you all the stories, Brother Chase and myself, because we've studied it. We can talk to you about it forever. But the one thing I want you to take away is this. Vaccine technology is not European technology. In fact, in the United States, I'm not talking about during the ancient world, I'm talking about very recently in the comparison of human time. During the enslavement of African people, there was a major epidemic occurring in the Boston area.
Right.
It was smallpox. Smallpox.
Absolutely.
Tens of thousands of people were dying. And because they had enslaved Africans, they said, well, look, all these people that are dying, we don't want to touch the bodies. Force the slaves to do it. That's what they did. And after these enslaved Africans were tending to the bodies, guess what they began to realize? Well, wait a minute. Why is it that the enslaved are not getting sick, but we are? And so one of the enslavers speaks to an African man from Ghana who he enslaved. His name is recorded as Onesimus. We don't know what his African name was before he was born.
Right.
But his name is recorded as Onesimus. Onesimus says, well, the reason why y'all getting sick is because you don't do what we do in West Africa. This enslaver, a man by the name of Cotton Mather, he's an enslaver and a reverend, by the way, Chase.
I'm familiar with him. Yeah, it's hilarious when you look at the history.
We're not going to even say anything else about that because y'all get it, right? But anyway, he speaks to Onesimus, and Onesimus says, well, what you need to do, you know those pustules, those boils that come up from smallpox? We take them from someone who is sick. We let them sit in the sun so we know that they're dead. And then we place them, we make a cut, and we place them in the arm of someone who is not sick. That person won't get sick. We have figured out how to use this pathogen that is killing people to stop it from killing people. He explained this story of inoculation to Cotton Mather, and within a few short years, Cotton Mather explains what Onesimus tells him, and they are able to reduce the numbers of people. There were tens of thousands of people dying just in the Boston area. Within 10 years, almost no one dies because of this practice. Vaccine technology, inoculation technology is African. And it was brought to the United States. I'm not talking about ancient Africa now. It was brought to the United States by West Africans, our most immediate ancestors. If you understand what it means to be an African, what you have brought to the world in excellence, African, you will understand that none of the things that are troubling us today are above us. That in fact, we can defeat any system, any structure, any person that seeks to set themselves against us can be defeated by us. That's what understanding the history does. And so those are the three things I say that we should do. We have to understand that our social relationships are our greatest resource. That our connection between the genders is fundamentally important, and that we must view ourselves as equal. And then finally, we must recognize that our history tells us that there is nothing that the African can't do, that we are the most resilient people on the planet, that we are the most balanced people on the planet, that we are the most resourced people on the planet. Those stories will help us. And I want to say, I know that's your final question, Brother Chase, the documentary Hoppy, that you'll see at hoppyfilm.com. You'll figure out how you can even go and see a streamed showing. So you can sit in a room with other people watching and discuss it. And then there are panels of the people who are in the documentary talking about it. Folks, when you look at the documentary, it will help understand not just who we are, but how we got to where we are right now and how we're going to get out. You got to be part of the Hoppy Film movement.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's why history is so important, family, because history always going to repeat itself. So we got to learn. We got to learn it, family. And like I say, Happy Film is pinned down below. I believe the live screening is on May 1st, family. So May 1st, I believe the live streaming is on. I'm going to be in there, absolutely, because, you know, you're going to have a panel discussion after it.
Yeah.
It's going to be terrific. It's going to be terrific. But, you know, Brother Jabari, I just want to thank you once again for joining. I know you're a busy man. I'll be trying to hit you up sometime, and you be ghost on. Yeah, I've tried to hit you up before, but you be ghost on me. But it's all love. It's all love.
You probably tried to reach me on Instagram.
No, I got your cell.
You sent me a message?
Yeah, I sent you a message. It was a while ago, though. It was a while ago, and I figured you were busy.
I'm going to reach you, okay? This week, I'm going to call you. Because,
absolutely.
Listen, that wasn't hyperbole when I said that, you know, older scholars have to make sure that younger scholars have the resources they need so they become who they're supposed to be. Because we need people like you. We need brothers and sisters like our brother Chase McGee to become the people that our ancestors expect them to become. This is a continuing story. There are some battles that Brother Chase may be able to strike the decisive blow in after Jabari is already an ancestor. So I have to make sure you have all the tools, all the weapons to do that.
That's a blessing. That's a blessing. Like I say, I just want to do my part moving forward. I didn't take it personal at all because I knew we would cross paths eventually.
Yeah.
You know, because we're in the same, you know, kind of field, and everybody's always requesting you need to do a bill with Brother Jabari. You need to do a bill with Brother Jabari.
I didn't save your number because when you text me, I was looking for your number. I couldn't find it. So I didn't save it.
This was probably like I say, this was probably last year when I had texted you or something like that. But I figured, like I say, you were busy. I know you go around the country doing things of that nature. But like I say, I knew our paths would cross paths again. So, you know, it is what it is. And we right here. This is another powerful discussion. We're going to say this. Make sure we put it on the YouTube page. And we got to have you on here again, Brother Jabari.
Oh, please. You just tell me when you want me on and I'm on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Honestly, and we could talk about anything, wide-ranging.
Right, right. And I think I always like to see the family to have a conversation just to let people know that we don't agree on everything, even when it comes to the voting. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. I think that's where our community goes left. We start taking personal attacks. We can agree with 99% of the stuff somebody say. They disagree with one thing, and it's he's an agent. He's this, he's that. So, you know, I always want to have those conversations. And like I say, even with the elders, but it's always respectful. I'm always coming in as a student trying to learn and trying to build. And I'm going to make sure I research. I got my notepad right here. That's what I was looking down. I was writing down stuff. So I'm going to make sure I go research after I get off of this.
That's right. And, you know, Brother Chase, I didn't agree with everything that Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark and Dr. Turner and all those people that trained me did. I didn't agree.
Right.
So I didn't agree with everything, right?
Right.
I think sometimes people think that means they gave me information. Everything they said, I just sucked up. The reality is that we have to have dialogue so we can come out to creating a strategy that works. Right?
Absolutely.
So Brother Chase is saying we shouldn't vote. Maybe some of our conversation is going to help him make not voting work. Because I'm not saying that not voting can't be a tool. I'm just saying it has to be used in a certain way, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that what we have to do is we have to have these dialogues so we can figure out what the strategy is going to be.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely. But thank you again, Brother Jabari. I'll make sure I give you a text after this and make sure everything is okay. But thank you again. Make sure you go to happyfilm.com, family. Get the documentary. Brother Jabari is in there. Professor Smalls is in there. Is Baba Haru in there, I believe?
Baba Haru was in there.
Okay, yeah. Well, a lot of scholars that you know and love, family, are in there. So make sure you go get that. Also, go get our brother's book. Beautiful breakdown in the book, brother.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful. Well done. And you made it simplistic. I like scholars who make stuff simplistic.
Yeah.
It wasn't over my head because some people I just have to stop at the first page and highlight and look up all day what they're talking about. So make sure you go get this book. It's on Amazon. Do you have a site, brother? Because I like people to get it from your personal site.
If you just go to JabariOsaze.com. Now, see, the difference is getting on Amazon is wonderful, but if you get it from JabariOsaze.com, you'll get a signed copy. So you can do that as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. So make sure you do that, family. But it's your brother Chase. I'm about to let you go, Brother Jabari. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely. And we'll be in person soon, too.
Absolutely. I'll make sure we link up. We got to link up.
All right.
Absolutely. All right. Peace, brother. Okay. All right, family. Listen, family, we off of here. You know, we live. Make sure you go to happyfilm.com. Make sure you get that film. Appreciate Brother Jabari. Make sure you go follow his page. We got to get Brother Jabari active on the Instagram. You know, so make sure you go follow his page, Brother Jabari Osaze. And until next time, family, y'all know what it is, man. Peace and Black Power. I'm out. Wait. No, before I'm out, I'm sorry. I forgot to do this. The first 2 people who DM me with what they learned about 3 things that you learned about this live or 3 things that you learned in this live, I'm going to get the happy film for you. And I'm also get our brother's book, 7 Little White Lies. So we want to do that as well. So the first 2 people who DM me 3 things they learned, you got to DM this page. Don't be cheating. Don't go to the Voice of the Ancestors page. Don't be trying to hit my email so you can skip the line. The first 2 people to DM me, you're going to get the 7 Little White Lies, and you also going to get the happy film, family. So make sure you go do that right now. Until next time, family, peace and Black Power.